Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Welcome to the Control F5 webinar, Rethinking Digital Brand Activation. All of us from Candid are very happy that you've joined us today. I'm Amrita Kumar, CEO and co-founder of Candid Marketing, and with me is Atul Nath, MD and founder of Candid Marketing. And both of us will be hosting you and moderating the discussions in this webinar. This is a forum for marketers and brand custodians like us to discuss the why, what, and how of digital brand activation in these times. Some quick housekeeping announcements. The chat is disabled. There'll be 3 sessions, 40 minutes each. And between the sessions, there'll be a 10-minute break for us to get set up for the next session. So getting started. Post the pandemic, marketing will be the link between the brands and the consumers, and marketing will play a pivotal role. But what happens when the consumers are not going to get out of the house much and prefer staying at home? Brands will be asking, how will our consumers' needs change? And how do we head into this whole post-crisis new normal with a new marketing mix? Where do we spend money? How do we handle this whole volatile climate? It'll be interesting also to see how we as marketing planners and partners handle this situation differently. Technologies that were previously more experimental are now becoming viable means of conducting business. So without further ado, I'll start with the first session. The first session deals with digital brand activation, not an optional in tomorrow's world. Basically, what we want to discuss here is, while digital is an obvious choice, does it really work, and get into the whole why of it. Our first speaker is Pius Walker. Pius is Swiss, but not really neutral. He went to the Swiss art school and has spent time in a Vietnamese prison for creating a very creative looking visa. He joined the Swiss Special Forces, which taught him how to kill and jump out of a plane, but he claims it's not at the same time. After that, he landed in the London advertising scene, where his love for advertising started. He worked for big agencies in Hamburg and Berlin, and after that returned to Zurich to start Walker, the world's smallest agency. Proving that size doesn't matter, the Gunn report listed Walker in the top 40 creative agencies worldwide. He's been awarded Switzerland's Ad Man of the Year and also earned a United Nations award on behalf of Amnesty International. Nestle has retained Walker recently to help lift its brands even higher. I think there's a video before Piers starts talking.
When we first opened our doors.
Since 1926.
Since 1978.
For 60 years.
For 75 years.
For over 80 years.
In 90 years.
Over 100 years.
Nationwide has been on your side.
Restaurants have always been there for you.
Nissan has been with you through thick and thin.
We will do what we've always done.
Take care of people.
We're people.
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 People. People.
People and family.
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 Family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family.
Families. Families. Families.
Even now. Especially now.
Especially now.
Right now.
Now more than ever.
More than ever.
Today, more than ever.
Today, more than ever.
In times like this.
At times like these.
During these difficult times.
In these troubled times.
Challenging times.
Trying times.
In these times of uncertainty.
During this time of great uncertainty.
During these uncertain times.
During these uncertain times.
In uncertain times.
In uncertain times. Uncertain times.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented times.
This unprecedented moment in our history.
It's time of social distancing.
While things have slowed down.
As we turn more inside.
While the doors may be closed.
While the distance between us has gotten bigger.
The more we stay apart,
we still find ways to stay close, even when we're apart.
Even if we can't stand closer than 6 feet.
We can all stay connected to work, school, and most importantly, to each other.
There's still ways to touch each other.
All without leaving the comfort and safety of your home.
Without leaving the safety of your home.
From home.
Home. Your home.
At home.
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 Home. Home. Home. Home.
Home. Home. That's the key.
Buick and GMC are here to help.
Con Edison is here to help.
Here to help.
Our teams are here.
We are here.
We're here.
We're here.
Here for you.
Here for you.
We're here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you. We'll be here for you.
Runnings is here for you.
We're still here for you.
We're with you. We're part of your community.
So you can trust us.
You can count on us.
And we'll get through this. Together.
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 Together. And together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Mastercard.
Yes, Pius.
Yes, yes, very good to be here. Thanks very much for the invite. I think it's a very interesting forum and panel we got here, digital brand activation. And I was sort of thinking, how can we get in the lead of digital brand activation in the future? And my thoughts are sort of circling around the fact that I think that the brand and the person are identical in many ways, especially in the ways that are relevant to marketing communications. And in this, as we did here before in this video, in this very special time we are now in, interestingly, I think most of us sort of are forced into this kind of worldwide merry-go-round and find themselves in a time of reflection. And indeed, the situation we all find ourselves in at the moment is probably the most interesting and decisive time of our generation. And it could be nothing less than a cornerstone in the history of humanity, really. I believe so. And the beginning of a new era, a new age. And that goes for advertising as well, of course. And for me, it might be called the new age of humility and respect. And I know in German is this word Demut, which is quite an interesting word, but it can't be translated into English. And it means something like respect and humility, but also says knowing the place we are in and that we are smaller than the whole. So we kind of, know your place. And I think it's really a question of mindset that is important in the future. And this new age of humility and respect means that we need to realize that we don't know a fraction of what we think we know. We realize the vulnerability of our species, and we're realizing endless growth is an illusion, simply because the size of the planet will always be the same and not expand. And this very simple, basic thought will lead to the age of less, basically. That means for the survival of our species, a complete change of our mindset will be indispensable. Less is not only more. In the future, less will be everything. And this leads to a completely new age in communication. As we all know, we don't have a lack of information. We have a lack of high quality filters that present us with less information. That's where the money is. We have an exploding amount of new channels and tools at hand, and that explosion will continue, but we are faced with a lack of attention. That is the issue. And this leads to the age of the big idea, which I'm a strong believer into, the age of big and differentiating ideas. As the quality of mainstream communication will continue to improve on an executional level, new technical possibilities will further enhance the level of advertising messages, and while making them more effective, also make them more and more congruent with the next message. They will all be the same. In the sea of high quality sameness, only real differentiation will lead to effectiveness. So function beats form, and this is why I believe that the age of big ideas is about to begin. So, in summary of my short introduction, so whoever keeps the above 4 points in mind, in my view, will take the future lead in digital brand activation. Thank you.
Thanks, Pius. Thanks a lot. We'll get into questions after everybody shares their views. Our next speaker is Siddarth. Siddarth Menon is the Chief Marketing Officer at Drums Food International, makers of India's first Greek yogurt, Epigamia. At Epigamia, Sid's role is to drive growth, awareness, and advocacy through strategic initiatives using consumer insight and an integrated marketing approach that brings the brand essence to life across online and offline channels. Lovely to have you here, Siddarth. Can you just share your views before you?
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for having me here. I think from a digital brand activation standpoint, I think fundamentally we all realize that as manufacturers and marketers, we cannot be unidimensional in our communication. That wasn't true earlier. It's definitely not going to be true going forward. And I think let's take a step back and let's try and understand this sort of unprecedented, to most of us at least, event of a pandemic. What sort of behaviors are we going to see play out of the consumers? What's really going to come out of it? And I think if you go back in history and you look at what war has done to consumers and what pandemics have done to consumers, you get sort of three sort of threads that play out. I think one is consumers or people, not consumers, humans have this resilience to acceptance. They accept the new norm, right? And they modify behavior basis this new norm. We are very resilient as a species. We obviously have no control on the pandemic, so therefore we do things that will help us grasp more control. And I'll talk about how that will sort of change behaviors. And I think the biggest thing is, and that's the video that you guys showed earlier, there is this pro-social behavior that comes in. When you're going through grief, when you think of others, that sort of manages your own grief in many ways, or manages your own anguish in many ways. I think these three things will probably play out in what I believe are four sort of behavior changes or codes of behavior that will play out. For me, one is protection. People will think about their protection a lot more. I saw a beautiful little photograph a friend sent me, which is a bill of a dark kitchen order that he had made, which had the temperature of all the employees that walked in. So hygiene footprint is something that I will demand from people that's stuff that I buy. The other code of behavior that will change is readiness. We'll always want to be ready because we're going to go through this hammer and dance for the next 2 years. There's going to be restraints, lockdowns. So therefore, I think e-commerce, community commerce, they'll all play a huge role in the way we deliver our products to our consumers. Will obviously, the go-to-markets will change. I think trust is going to be a big factor. Organizations need to show solidarity. That's really when consumers will sort of build in. So, it's no longer talking about your products. It's really talking about what you're doing to make this world a better place. That's going to play out. And I think consumers in their sense of grasping control will also want upliftment. And I think brands will play a huge role in sort of giving them avenues to uplift themselves during this time. These sort of four codes will really play out. And underlying with these codes is the fact that digital, where people were very comfortable to connect, were very comfortable to, as a form of entertainment, very comfortable for discovery, now are making digital comfortable for fitness, education, and even commerce. Very few people are very sort of reluctant to do commerce on digital. Now they're very comfortable doing it. So I think digital will play a huge role. And to summarize, organizations cannot be unidimensional anymore. We'll have to sort of play out these consumer behaviors and see how to bring them to life on digital.
Cool. That's very interesting. I have a few questions which I'll come back to you with later. Our next speaker is Suchita Salwan. She launched Little Black Book or LBB in 2015 as a platform to connect unique local brands and businesses with consumers across India. It's a web and app-based platform. LBB enables over 100,000 local brands and businesses to get discovered, connected, and retail their products to customers across India. So Suchita has also been on the Forbes India and Asia's 30 under 30 list, Forbes W Power list, Fortune India 40 under 40, and has been a speaker at Harvard University's India's conference. There's so many credentials. Sorry, I stuttered. Suchita, over to you.
Lists are stupid, guys. Lists are stupid. Don't believe anything. Okay, I'll give you guys my perspective, right? So, Sid on this call, and I'm sure Cadbury to some extent as well. Our platform is all about driving two types of behaviors, right? Either helping a customer make decisions online, and then extending those decisions offline. Or because we launched commerce recently, a user can also shop through our platform. We've been affected in a fairly interesting way, where obviously the customer is now becoming a consumer. And I'll actually lead with that in terms of the trends that I see, right? Your customer, the person who earlier used to buy from you, the person who earlier, who you used to perhaps earlier entice with, Facebook, Instagram and Google campaigns with the ROI as purchases made, that base is shrinking, right? And it's shrunk considerably, and all of us can only hope that that base grows or comes back to some level of normalcy over the next couple of months. However, that customer has now become a consumer, and there's a difference in between the two, right? You consume information, you consume content, you consume events, you consume webinars like this, but you may not necessarily be customers to this. And I think that's where that's the first trend that I'll start with, wherein brands need to think about their customers as consumers as opposed to just folks who will transact with them. Because I think that equation and that relationship in between brands and business is going to change fairly considerably, especially over the next 6 to 8 months, right? We can only hope that there's some revival closer to our festive seasons, but I think that's the one thing that I'll begin with. At LBB, we've made a lot of changes. So even we've realized that, our customers we need to retain this customer. We've spent all of this money, we've created all of this effort in acquiring these users. We can't have it all piss away, right? So you have to make sure that you engage with those users. So if you opened our platform 3 months ago, and if you open our platform right now, there's a dramatic difference in between the experience. So in the past 3 weeks, actually, we guys have done over 200 live events. So everything from, music gigs to doodling classes to baking workshops, it's all happened on LBB. We've done a lot of at-home entertainment. So, recipes at home to doing your gardening at home, this, that, and the other. We've also, launched things like shoppable videos. So now you can, watch a review of 3 snack brands, and you can, shop those brands off of our platform, because we launched essentials on our app and our web as well. But the point that I'm making is, I think we all realize that, we can't let this consumer go, because we've toiled way too hard to get them into our funnel. We cannot let them go just because, they may not necessarily be buying our products or buying things that we sell to them as of right now. So I'll start with that. I think the second thing that I'll sort of lean into is more than ever, consumers will want to make choices. They won't want options. And the difference in between the two is, say, for example, look at fashion as a category, right? You don't buy the first thing that you see, you browse, right? There's an element of discovery, serendipity, window shopping involved. With categories like that taking a bit of a hit, with your more, superfluous expenses taking a bit of a hit, this consumer will not want to tool around. They will want to make a choice. And when I look at things from the perspective of LBB, essentially, for platforms like us, we need to empower choices more than just empowering optionality, because the consumer doesn't have time to browse 30 t-shirts, which they are unwilling to buy as of right now. So I think that's the second big trend that I'll lean into. The other more obvious one is I think content marketing has never been more important than before, right? And this goes back to the point that I made earlier about customer versus consumer, where you have to make sure that your user doesn't leave you. Even if whether it means you show them a comedy show or you show them whatever, it doesn't matter. We've seen the biggest platforms that are e-com platforms that are doing comedy shows. There's no correlation in between the two, but you have to keep them engaged. There's too much CAC that will, get flushed down the toilet. I think the last thing that I'll say is, I am a part of this book club. Don't ask, guys, but I'm a part of this book club, and we've been reading Nassim Nicholas Taleb's "Fooled by Randomness." And I think the one, piece of advice that I'll give to everyone over here, and I think Pius spoke about this as well, but let's not be fooled by randomness. There are so many things that will become viral, that will get a lot of traction. They're all random in nature. It's very, very hard to predict, which way this consumer will go. So keep throwing darts, keep trying things out. But just because you see success with one thing, don't expect replicability of it, because even the user is anxious. They're a little all over the place right now. So those are the three things that I'll share.
Some very cool thoughts, Suchita. Thanks a lot. Your perspective is actually very, very valuable, which is not to say the others is not. It's because, you come from a non-marketer point of view. You are a marketer, but in that sense, you've got a platform, and, you're a content and commerce platform, and that gives you a different perspective. And the moment you said Taleb, I could see Anil getting very excited, and he's going to be getting a chance to speak, because, he's a real Taleb man, if I can call him that. So, Amrita, go ahead.
Yeah, so Atul's already given a clue. Anil's next. Anil Viswanathan is Director of Marketing Chocolates of Mondelez India, and is responsible for spearheading the chocolates category. He spent 18 years in the company across a variety of roles, and also across different territories around the world. He's an avid runner, a Manchester United fan, and loves food.
Yeah.
Anil, over to you.
Hi, hello everybody. Many things are going to change in the new normal, but some things may not, like old habits. It's highly likely that a marketer will continue to use PowerPoint. So with your due permission, I'm going to use a few slides to tell my story. I hope the tech works. Meanwhile, in case you hear some loud noises around me, just because there are 3 kids at home, not because the tech isn't working. So here we go. Just let me know if you can see my screen, Amrita.
We can.
Yes, all good. Go for it.
So hi, I'm Anil. I manage the chocolate business for Mondelez. That's my mugshot. And I thought I'll start my story through this mugshot. So that's me in pre-COVID times. And this is me in post-COVID times. And even looking at that picture and looking at myself, I can see so many things have changed, right? I haven't worn a jacket in 45 days. I haven't worn a buttoned up full sleeve shirt again in 45 days. I haven't worn perfume in 45 days. I haven't worn my contact lenses in a very, very long time, since I'm not allowed to go out running. So a lot has changed, and a lot is likely to continue to change. I really loved the points that my co-panelists spoke about. Pius, I love the point around reflecting about your role in the world, your position in the world, and how everything else is changing around us, and we need time to reflect. I love the points that you made about the resilience to acceptance, and the point around people wanting upliftment. And Suchita, I loved your point around not letting your consumers go. I'm telling you, I'm really desperate. I don't want to let my consumers go. It is quite dynamic. Speaking about our brands and our business, we've indeed been affected by this new normal. 2 spaces that we see things changing, 2 reasons why things are changing for us. A lot of people are staying at home, which means the thing they used to do outside no longer relevant, means that a lot more value has been given to things that are happening at home, family, friends, the power of social connections, how to be connected despite being at home, etc., etc. And for brands and categories like us, which are heavily dependent on impulse, really making us reflect in terms of how do we connect to our consumers while they are at home? How do you ensure that our categories reach them? And secondly, more specific to India, is really access, and how access has dramatically changed, disrupted. And while we continue to hope that it is just a disruption and it will come back to normal, there's also a sinking feeling that in many cases, access is going to change permanently. So with this changing and a lot of perspectives coming in terms of consumer behavior and how consumers are thinking about life and restricted living, I thought I'd talk about two things specific to the point around digital activation. And the 2 points I wanted to talk about are really full funnel commerce. A few of my co-panelists already spoke about it. And for large brands like ours with big distribution, with a lot of offline business, we are having to reflect on how do we really activate full funnel commerce? What was possibly a little bit of a hobby, something that was subscale, has suddenly become pretty much a lifeline. And I think as we look forward into the future, definitely feels that there's going to be a significant change. We've seen this before. There are many case studies of how things changed in China post-SARS, and that is really coming alive with every passing day in terms of full funnel commerce. And the second point that I reflect on and that we are preparing for is really the point around engagement and how the space around digital is has always provided for engagement. But to the point that some of my panelists have made earlier, given the times that we live in and given the kind of disruption we're going through, it is becoming more important for brands to have a point of view, to really think about what they stand for, what they want to do, and how they want to engage with consumers beyond just offering their products and services. And really use that purpose to engage on a one-to-one basis to make a meaningful transaction. It's only then we feel that feeling of losing out to my customers doesn't happen. So these were the kind of two things that I feel are going to be very important. And this is where digital activation really is going to come alive. When I speak about full funnel commerce, even in the pre-COVID times, we've seen from our category how we've been able to activate across the entire funnel much more actively in 2020 than before, and it's going to become even more important. I'm using Valentine's Day as an example. We had a really great Valentine's Day activation earlier this year. And starting from storytelling to engaging to actually converting into commerce through personalization, we could really see that activating our brands in the digital world, we could really bring it all together much more effectively than ever before. And in terms of engaging with purpose, again, being a most trusted brand, we've tried to take strides to engage with our consumers almost on an always-on basis, based on a purpose that we found for our brand, which is in the space of generosity, and really shining a little light of generosity in an increasingly selfish world. And it's really wonderful, isn't it? There are times of crisis. This indeed need to be generous to others and to be humble and to thank all those who are making our lives secure really comes to light so strongly. And we believe that digital becomes really important in this space to engage meaningfully, because many of the things that we could have not conceived of in a traditional unidirectional me to many kind of advertising has changed to one-on-one meaningful purpose-driven engagement. So I guess these are the two things that I wanted to kind of talk about. And with that, hand it over back to Amrita and Atul. Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. If you can do a stop screen share. Atul, do you want to move to the questions? One second, Atul. Just for the attendees, the question box is open. So if you have any questions, type away. We've also collected some questions before the session through links which were emailed to registered attendees. So we've got some already. So the others you can type away for any who are panelists. Atul?
Yeah, so what I'm going to start with is, I was listening quite intently to obviously all four, and I'd like to thank them for being here, obviously. Pius, you talked about, the need for the big idea and the age of the big idea. In many ways, the age of the big idea has been around for some time. How do you kind of see it playing out differently from earlier? The age of the big idea used to be not so long back about converting to that one single TVC, the television commercial. That used to be the rendition of the big idea. How do you see that changing, if at all? I mean, TV, people are still watching TV, though they may be watching Netflix instead of terrestrial television, cable television. But how do you see that changing in terms of the conversion of the big idea into more relevant content and as a result, commerce? Because all four of you talked about, well, three of you talked about the importance of commerce from a digital perspective.
Well, first of all, I think the big idea, you're absolutely right, is sort of a timeless thing. But it becomes more and more important as we struggle to cope with the information overload we are all facing. And so I think it becomes just because what's really happening, if you look at the communications markets as a whole, is that the middle bulk is getting better and better. It gets more professional, it gets, lovely executed. And so you got to have a differentiation if you really want to overtake. You can't overtake in the shadow of the wind. So you have to really make yourself heard and have a different viewpoint. If you don't have that, in the future, it will be harder and harder and harder because the fight in the middle section will be even more intensely. So I think it's independent of the media. The reason why the big TV ad in the 80s and the 90s was the big TV ad because TV was big. So I think we need to differentiate between content and form in that respect. And I think that it's really, really, really important that we connect over a big idea. And this, in many, many ways will play out digitally. Of course, it will.
Right. Yeah. There's a question that Devyani Jagdale is just posted on here, and it was a question which was in my mind as well when Siddarth, you were talking about, and actually Siddarth and Anil, both of you spoke about, and Suchita through her platform thing is also talking about commerce. But in the pre-COVID area, we all saw that, shopping or commerce was very often precursored by some form of engagement, experience, sampling, demonstration of all kinds of things. Now, that if it becomes a challenge to do, because, again, Mandeep Malhotra mentions in the Q&A that, experiences are usually of the five senses, and digitally it's going to be really hard, obviously, to bring those five senses alive. So how do you kind of see that, becoming a challenge and being resolved by brands, etc.? So maybe Siddarth, since you brought up the commerce thing first, we can start with you and go on to Suchita and Anil.
Yeah, I know that's an interesting challenge because for us, we're a food product and the moment of truth has always been about taste. And that's really where we've invested a lot of our money to get people to taste the product. And that means, when someone's in the store shopping is really accosting them and getting them to taste the product. And that's led to a lot of conversion. Now, needless to say, at least for the next 3-6 months, maybe even a year, people are not going to frequent stores as often, or even if they frequent, they will be averse to tasting anything in the store because they're not sure of the hygiene footprint. And therefore that will always be an issue. But taste will still remain super important. Now, while we've got people to taste off the spoon in the store, we might need to create smaller packs that they can take home, sanitize. We'll have to have distribution models where we reach the product to their house so they can taste. Taste will still be super important, but we'll have to find ways where they get small packs or a delivery mechanism that goes right to their house. And if direct to home, e-commerce platforms like Swiggy, Zomato, which are going to sort of probably be the way people buy groceries and buy food to eat, it's through those platforms that you have to give them senses of taste, feel, and so on and so forth. The store, at least temporarily, and we are seeing that at least for the next 3 to 4 months, depends how the lockdown plays out. But I truly believe consumers will be averse to tasting and engaging in the store. They will still want to keep a social distance, and that will be a challenge. So we'll have to find other ways to get people to taste the product. One of the ways that we used in the past, and that's our guerrilla marketing days, is anyone in the store or anyone in an event, we just go and give them a free product. That was the luxury that we had, when we were starting off the business. Obviously our ambitions are higher. We want
those early days.
But we'll have to find some other solution, and that's going to be a challenge. But I think as manufacturers, we will find that solution because taste will still be super important.
Absolutely. Suchita?
Yeah, I wanted to add, and can I give examples? Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay, awesome, cool.
It is encouraged.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so I'm going to show off because my colleagues have done a stellar job in actually cracking this. So I'll give you two examples, right? We recently ran a campaign for ITC Sunbeam. And they actually leaned into the Dalgona Coffee Challenge that's all over the internet. And we ran this really fun campaign where we got a couple of influencers to challenge each other using Sunbeam. And to the question that you asked, right? More than ever, people are counting on people that they trust. Influencers is one, platforms like LDD is another. So I think this is actually a great time to lean into vehicles of trust. And vehicles of trust, take multiple different manifestations, but that campaign worked really, really well on our platform and for ITC. So, sampling needn't necessarily always be picking up the product and giving it to a million people to taste. It is about sampling through vehicles of trust, right? So that's one example of something we've done. I'll give you guys another really fun example of something that we tried out recently, where baking and cooking as a content category is obviously crushing it on LBV right now. And we have a bunch of these live Zoom classes that we do. So we recently did a Zoom class, and we're going to be launching another one soon, where we ship the ingredients to all the attendees of the class in advance. So tomorrow, a Cadbury or an Epigame or whoever who wants to host a cooking workshop where one of their ingredients is a part of the kit, they can send it out to people in advance, and people can use that kit in this live Zoom class conducted by an expert chef or whoever else. So these are just two examples of things that we've tried and tested, and frankly, they've worked really, really well, where, do two things. One, lean on vehicles of trust, or second is ship the ingredients to people, get them to try it out. You obviously may not be able to ship it to, hundreds of thousands of people, because that's not economically viable. Just your shipping cost will be, in between 60 to 100 rupees, whether you use a hyper-local partner or, one of the large partners. But I do think there are really unique ways in which sampling opportunities can be created, and it may not be in the literal sense of, taking a tray and making people try your product. But these two have been fairly effective, for brands that we worked with at LBV.
Yeah, and just building on that, Atul, I think there's a thought came across from my end, which is that I think the 2 points being made is, I think there is definitely an opportunity to inspire the consumer to go ahead and experience. And I think the platform does provide the opportunity. Digital platforms provide, and brands like Epigame has been doing that wonderfully already. Inspiring and almost enticing the experience to say that the experience is as wonderful as what you can see, which is again something that this medium has been able to explore. And I think the second thing is the fact that, going back to the point that the truth is in the eating, especially for food brands, it's actually going back to saying that a large part of that part of marketing, Atul, you've seen this for many years, actually has become transactional over time. And what I anticipate after this is actually getting more special, more personalized. Maybe things like on-premise will become even more important. It'll convert itself into an event in itself, that come and experience, an almost appointment-based experience. I think it will definitely get expensive for brands, but it is an investment that will, again, create its own kind of a positive word-of-mouth spiral. It will become something that you look forward to. Yeah. I almost see an auto show equivalent for food coming up at some point in time, where people all gather and talk about experiences of that sort, which they can't experience in general in a typical store on a plate, as Suchita was saying. It's going to change, and possibly change for the good.
Okay, we've got several questions, and we are running short of time. I'll say both the questions quickly, and it's for mostly all of you. Some of us are asking, when people are used to living with less and making the right noise, how do you make the business decision of the right communication? And the second part of the question is kind of connected, is and Suchita did talk about trends. With so many also trends happening, how does the brand decide, or which levers does a brand use to decide which trend to jump on, especially in these times? So I think I've kind of clubbed a lot of people's questions, yeah, but I think this will be the last one.
How do you maintain your conscience while making brand decisions?
Exactly.
I don't know who, anyone can start.
Yeah.
Siddarth, you want to give it a go?
No, so I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly, but I think if it's a point, I think one question that I understood correctly is what do you really chase after?
Yeah, the trends. How do you decide which trend to jump on?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And fundamentally, I think what we have to realize is that consumers are going to need better communication that goes to them saying, why should I value you? Right? And therefore, for me, the big idea is more internal than external. Is at the end of the day, I need to be consistent for what I stand for what I communicate, for what I end up doing. I think the brand fundamentals will be tested and tested very, very strongly. You do not want to overstretch, if you ask me. So if you're a brand that does not stand for protection, don't stand for it just because consumers want it. Yes, you need to have a hygiene footprint, but that doesn't mean you suddenly release a product that's saying that I will kill germs. I think it's super important for the brands to be steady. For me, that's the big idea. And be consistent. And instead of doing too much, whatever you do, do the right and do it properly. So more quality than quantity. I think that fundamental is something that we followed and we will continue to follow. We don't want to chase every trend. For us at Epigamia, we're very clear. The brand has a few content buckets. For us, our content buckets are taste, application, health, and consumption occasion. And that's what we will play out. What we're going to add to that, which is something that we've always done, but we'll heighten it a little more, is this sort of mindfulness and the hygiene footprint, because consumers want to know that the product that I'm eating, is it safe for me to eat? And I think those are some of the content buckets that we'll add. There will be some level of contextual marketing, which will be very tactical, which will probably be about 5-10%. But the idea is not to chase every trend, according to me. So the big idea is more internal than external.
Anil, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what Siddarth is saying. I think the only additional bit that I would add is sometimes the challenge is we take it upon ourselves that we need to convince everybody that what you're doing is right. I mean, if you're doing something which is true to your values and closest to what your brand stands for, then you don't need to really seek endorsement. I think sometimes we tend to start double guessing whether one idea will get a better endorsement than the other, if some idea is going to get laughed at, if somebody is going to scorn at my idea, I think that is the wrong timing. And then that leads to trying to be risk averse or trying to then respond to what somebody is saying or feeling. I think coming back to your core, as Sid very nicely said, is really the core of it. I think the other caveat is also to say that, in all of these things, it's better to be quiet is also not an easy way out. More than ever, we do hear a consumer say, please tell us what you think. Talk to us. So you have to talk. You have to take the risk. I think the easiest way out is to listen to yourself and dig into your core values. I think what helps there is to have a strong ecosystem. The agencies who know your brands well, the partnerships, the platforms that you work with, they just give you reinforcement. And when you have something right, you just get that positive reinforcement from all your partners, right, which is, again, makes you believe that you're doing the right thing.
Suchita or Pius, would you guys like to add something? Suchita?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the beauty of digital is that you really don't have to second guess yourself and overanalyze and overthink, right? And to the point that you made earlier, Atul, I can confidently say this because we work with so many brands who, especially when it comes to digital, just overthink everything that they do. And I think, right now, at least where consumers are at, they're anxious, they're scared about their jobs, they're scared about so much of what the future holds. I think right now, more than ever, the consumer cares more about themselves than they care about, XYZ message that a brand is pushing out. And really what that gives brands a chance to do is have fun, experiment, try things, shoot in the dark. Obviously, to the point that both Sid and Anil made, don't make it too off what your brand promise is. But it's digital, man. The best thing about this is an Instagram story lasts only 15 seconds. So have fun with it. I think that's the first. I think the second thing that I'll add is, we've been doing this at LVB. We've actually been revisiting who our user is. So over the past 2 weeks, I've got every single team, every single business vertical just going back, making 100 calls to our users and just checking in on them, right? I think sometimes we forget who our user is because we're so used to servicing X need that we forget what are the new needs that have come up, which as a brand I can service. Again, without digressing too much from your original value proposition, but this is a great time for folks to just go out and make those customer calls, check in on your users, see what they're interested in, see how you can be a part of their everyday, and tie that in with what you have to offer.
That's pretty cool. That's interesting. Pius, you got a thought on that? I saw you answered one question. You're on mute, Pius. I saw that you answered one question by typing when someone asking about conscience. So maybe I'm going to give you the last word on what you brought up in your first little bit, that, how do brands maintain a certain conscience while communicating with consumers?
Yeah, I really like the answer of you guys to the question that you were asking before. And I think, coming back to what you said earlier, to the initial start, I mean, a brand and a person is really the same thing. It's the same thing. And the more we manage to bring the brand alive in a human way, the more attached the consumer will be and the more sales we'll ultimately do. So I think and I think all this double testing and, don't do mistakes thinking and over testing stuff will ultimately lead to crippling a brand, and it will be needed to make mistakes. It will be needed to have character and be different and be brave to maybe sometimes do something that is not completely perfect and end up with something which is more valuable, which is character. And I think that's what the consumer will be asking in the future.
Thanks, Pius. Thank you so much for all your time. Anil,
I can't believe we've run out of time. That was super quick. An hour has gone by and we didn't even know. Thanks a lot, guys. A lot of I know you guys are stuck at home. Stay safe, have fun while you're at home with the families. That's what we're all trying to do. And we'll all come out with stronger business on the other side. See you guys. Thanks a lot.
Everybody.
All right, bye.
Okay. For the attendees, our next session is going to start at 3:25 while we do a quick switch over to the next set of speakers. So please just quickly grab a cup of tea or coffee, whichever one, or maybe a beer or gin, since you are watching it from home. And we'll see you at 3:25. everyone, back for session 2. For people who are joining us for the first time and have chosen to skip session 1, you missed an awesome session. We actually kind of overspilled the time. We didn't realize 40 minutes is that less. So for the second session, we've got an amazing panel with us. The second session will delve around the whole delivering value to consumers through digital brand activation. We'll try and cover topics of storytelling, leveraging consumer insights, exploring or reimagining what a brand has to say or how do they say it, what role does empathy or tone or tonality has to play, especially in these times. Our first speaker, Fernandez, a nearshore creative director, meaning he tries to bring a deeper and always present creative thought to the inner guts of corporations and brands. He believes most brands need to have a permanent creative thinking and leadership inside their organization. They need to have those conversations in their corridors, their video chats, and in the board meetings all the time. Innovation and creativity, as per him, cannot be a department. They need to be a corporate culture. He also gets taken for being Robert Downey Jr. the most in India. So welcome, Joe. Joe, you're on mute. So if you can unmute yourself, that'll be great.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was a really nice presentation. Yeah, like you said, you should confess that you really wanted Robert Downey Jr. to be here. So, but you couldn't.
But he was busy, Joe, so I have to settle for you.
So I was the cheapest option. Okay. So guys, I'm going to be very sorry, but I'm going to read the text because usually I speak a lot. So I speak until somebody turns the mic off. So I'm going to read a small text and show you a presentation. And afterwards, I'll be totally free for the Q&A and participate as much as I allowed. Okay, so here goes. Without stories, humans cannot connect in an emotional and long-lasting way. This is really important to understand. Without stories, there's no emotion at all. That's the tricky part of using these in marketing. Brands are not humans, as someone said in the previous talk. And most humans recognize that. That's why brands often use human endorsers, but still the consumer knows they're getting paid to say what they're saying and minding credibility. The solution, always the same, honesty. Brands must assume they're not human and stop pretending to be, and start valuing the real and only humans in the equation, the consumers, instead of just saying they need to ask, collaborate, evolve, and grow together. For a few years now, technology has been the disruptive factor in digital marketing. The price brands are paying is massive normalization and standardization of their perceived images. They all use the same algorithms, the same set of best practices, resulting in a notion of lookalike products, offers, and messages. And when everything becomes normalized, what will be the disruptive factor? You, all your singularity, your personal story, your needs for comfort, pleasure, and healthy long life, ultimately survival and happiness. Brands must be culturally and timely attached to persons, not to be persons, but to be relevant in a person's life. And this is my key message, okay? I'm going to show you the presentation with some examples of work. I always think it's really important to see work. And this is work which is very much like connected with the times we're living during this quarantine period, okay? And our brands quickly adapted to it and still say, hey, I'm here and I can still be relevant in your life. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this goes pretty well.
Can go fine, don't worry.
Presentation. Share screen. Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, I need to. Apparently, I need to allow Zoom to do this first time.
Should I go ahead and do it for you?
Just. Yeah, do it because he asked me to reboot. So please do it. Okay, I'll be signaling you.
Please don't. Please don't reboot. Please don't reboot.
Okay. Like I said, this is really like most agencies have been getting a really tough set of briefs in order to turn around this situation and still keep the brands relevant and alive. So this is one of those briefs. So move on to the next slide. And basically, this is pretty much the brief. Help us not to sell our product, but in a good way. And this is...
Life is whatever we make it. The traveler is the journey. What we see is not what we see, but who we are. The world. What is the world, oh my love? The garden of my verses, all in bloom. Nothing gives the idea of the constancy of character, like the firmness of walking through seas men never sailed before. It is only because your waves are pure. The end of one journey is simply the start of another. You have to see what you missed the first time. It's time to read Portugal.
This is like, as you'll notice in a slide that it will come up, tourism is really important for the Portuguese economy. And the Office of Tourism in Portugal still wanted to say, hey, you're not going to be able to visit us, but you can still be in a way attached to Portugal and connected to us. So in these ways, through quotations of famous writers. So you cannot visit us, but you can still read us. So move on to the next one, which is out of the same brief.
It's time to stop. It's time to look out for each other in the distance. Time to stare humanity in the eyes. To take a break for the world. It's time to stop. Time to make a pause so we can play again. To think of everyone and meet no one. To reset, recenter, switch off, to move on. Time to change our little world. To calibrate the path of mankind. It's time to stop. We are meant to connect and we are stronger together. But separated, we are today more united than ever. And for now, our main strength is to be apart. It's time to stop. Nature, landscapes, beaches, and monuments aren't going anywhere. They will still be there waiting for a better time to be lived. And we must do the same for a while. It's time to stop. The perfect time not to visit anything. Sometimes to rise is to stand still. It's time to stop. Stop.
Okay. So you're moving too fast. Can you please go back a bit? Previous slides. Okay, so like I said, this is really important. Oh no, move again. That's the one. So like I said, this is a really important message for Portugal as a country and also as a brand and a product. This is how big it is. Like there's a represents there, which is badly written, sorry. But 16% of our economy and 10% of all jobs comes from tourism. So this is a very important message. Please go on. Next slide. The key message is we can still be connected while separated. And what connects us has always been stories. That's what's connected for thousands of years and still will continue to connect us. Move on. But this is something, the same way brands are not persons, brands cannot tell stories. And I'm very sorry about that. This is very important to understand because this single mistake has been producing a lot of, in my opinion, of course, a lot of bad work and a lot of misconceived ideas about what a brand can do. And in a way, not actually helping brands do a good job. Please go on. But that's something they can do. They can belong to stories. Again. Be an actor in those stories, the set, the reason to be, the motivation, the trigger. So there's still a key important factor and play for brands to be in those stories. And they need to understand that. And if they focus on being deeds and not a person, not in this case, pretending to be a person, which they'll never be, they will do a better job. Go on. And now I'm going to show you a final piece of work. So stories can be very long and very short. That really doesn't measure the quality of a story. The quality of the story is the meaning that has and the capacity it has to inspire us to share that story with other people. That's how it all goes. So Superboc is a very famous beer brand in Portugal, one of the two most important, and they created a new product during this pandemic period. So they created a new beer called Superdoc. And Superdoc, please go to the next slide, is basically an alcohol-free beer. And basically, by removing alcohol from the production process, they were able to do one very key important thing, produce a new product. And the product comes in the next slide, which is this. So this beer brand, by creating a new and make it very popular as alcohol-free, they was able to produce massive amounts of alcohol gel to provide hospitals with. So this is still a sub-product of a beer brand. So it's really important that by doing this, not only they're helping, but they're not pretending to be a person, but still be part of a story. In this case, a very important story for the survival of many people. So this is it.
Thank you,
Next
John.
slide,
Thank you. Is that it?
Is that it? Well, there was a final one, but that's not important. Just a thank you.
There you go.
Which Google helped me to translate to Hindi. Okay, that's all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Our second speaker is Steve. Steve Austen-Brown is the creative director for Avantgarde UK. He's been involved in the design of 2 pavilions within the Millennium Dome for people who've already visited and seen what it's about. Always fascinated in the integration of storytelling within live events. Prior to joining Avantgarde, Steve created a series of award-winning brand experiences, including the global launch of the Olympic 2012 identity. Steve has led the multidisciplinary creative team in Avantgarde's London office for the past 10 years, producing new narrative experience for a diverse portfolio of clients. Steve.
Thank you. And thank you for the invitation to share some thoughts with you. I will pretty much go straight to shared screen, and this will work seamlessly, I'm sure.
I'm sure it will.
Hopefully I'm on the start. It should say avant-garde.
It should. It is. Now it does.
Okay. I will read through something again, because otherwise I'm sure I'll go on a bit too long. So excuse the script. I'm going to frame this around live brand experiences, as that is my primary creative focus. Avantgarde was one of the first live event agencies to move from defining what they did as live events to simply live experiences. This was a key differentiation, because what we realized was that an event was too trapped in the image of temporary structures, staging, building permits, big LED walls, and large production teams in black running around behind the scenes. Sure, this is part of what we do, but at our core, we realized we were and are all about creating experiences for brands. This freed up everything, and for the last decade or so, we have been exploring all that has the potential to create a unique brand experience for diverse audiences, whether they consumers or B2B. During this time, we have seen the possibilities of digital technology expand our potential to tell brand stories in so many ways. No longer constricted by what we can do within 4 walls and a floor, we could let our imaginations soar into multi-sensory and multi-dimensional experiences. We have allowed the one thing that anchors our creative flight to be the story at the heart of the experience. After all, we are following the great tradition of storytellers through the ages at selling the dream. This has served us well as we entered this period of global lockdown and everything has become digital. It has become interesting that there has been basically two approaches that have been discussed and explored by clients and agencies over the last few weeks. One has been around fear of the unknown. This is framed around the scary proposition. I had all these marketing events planned for the next 6 months, head in hands. What am I going to do? The response from agencies has usually been, it's okay, we can do a digital version of your event. And this is basically replicating the real world. As you can see, that sometimes don't look that good. The other approach is more interesting. It tends to come from a more optimistic and bolder vision. What can I do in this new world? What does my audience want from me? And what can I offer them? This is about reimagining a marketing approach and going back to what the brand should be saying at this time. This fundamentally echoes something we have been working on with brands for years. However advanced the tools we have to play with, it all comes down to the singular and powerful story you want to tell. We had cave paintings, we had books, we had radio, we had cinema, we had and have video games, all tools to tell a great story. Now the full immersive opportunities of digital activations are our tools. AI, VR, virtual worlds, virtual influencers, digital twins, AR tours, MR demos, e-gaming, e-learning. I can go on and on. But forget the digital technology for a moment, all those tempting, glittering magic tricks. And remember that it will be the story that we as audiences remember. The power to resonate, trigger emotions, and yes, empathize our audience. To be respected for saying what needs to be said and reflecting the world we are coming to understand. That said, there's a fascinating YouTube video relation doing the rounds. I'll share a link if you haven't seen, which shows that many global brands, certainly in the TV advertising world, have been using a shared universal and limited vocabulary. The same tune, the same visuals, the same keywords, and the same sentiment to tell their story at this time. And they do blur into one, as the video demonstrates. Understanding and accepting that these statements had to be delivered swiftly, it is maybe not surprising that there is so much overlapping and interchangeable style and copy. It is also possible that there is indeed a universal story for brands to tell right now. But this does emphasize that what we will create as standout and power, sorry, I misread. But this does emphasize that what will create standout and power is the carefully craft of that story. Time spent perfecting it early on will reap its reward later on, especially if we are going to be tapping into that bigger overarching shared narrative for some time to come. If you know of the John Lewis TV ads shown every Christmas in the UK, you will recognize the impact of a simple story told well. When we combine that finely crafted story with the amazing opportunities of digital experiences, we are able to tell the vital stories we need to tell in ways that will stand out, be memorable, and perhaps still shared when we are well into the new normal. In fact, digital experiences are here to stay and will become part of that new normal, not replicating physical reality, but enhancing and reimagining it. The terrible pandemic has changed the landscape. The tectonic plates of our cultural and experiential world have dramatically shifted, but this creates new opportunities for essential and bold storytelling. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That's really a very interesting perspective about digital experiences, and we'll get into that questions with you later. I'll introduce our next speaker, Sakshi Verma Menon. Sakshi has been handling digital marketing, creative excellence, brand and strategy across brands like Colgate, Coke, Uber, and now Nicobar. She loves traveling and lives in the imaginary world of her two sons. Sakshi.
Quite a world that is.
Yeah, it is.
And you're seeing a lot more of the world these days. Thanks,
Of that
Amrita.
world.
Thanks, of that world, correct. Thanks, Amrita. Thanks, Atul. So, guys, what I'm going to really focus on, it's tough to speak after two creative folks have spoken and given their point of view also on marketing briefs, but I'm going to try and do justice to what I think is important from a marketer's perspective today. And I'm going to delve on two specific things. One, which is the importance of storytelling and really how digital brand marketing or digital brand engagements can actually help storytelling. And the second is what I think as marketers, we need to start reimagining in terms of what we thought earlier and what is it that we'll need to reimagine as we go forward. So I'll start with storytelling. And this has been spoken about, talked about many times, but fundamentally we all know that consumers aren't interested in hearing a lot more about brand promises, right? So for all of us as brand custodians, maybe a heartbreak moment, but it's true. The consumer really isn't sitting out there and waiting to hear about promises that we want to make about our brands. What they're keen to hear about are stories. What they're keen to know is a story that you want to tell them. And there are enough researches, enough studies that have been done which actually say that brands which tell a story have the power to increase the value of their product or the service by about 20 times. And brand storytelling is really a great way to get your point across, differentiate your brand, and work out new ideas. And today, really, if you want to succeed as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a marketer, you have to be a storyteller. There is really no way out. And digital marketing, or digital as a medium, actually provides you so many mediums today to actually tell your story, whether it's VR, it's social media and beyond. It's important for brands to actually pivot from advertising, brand marketing to actually becoming masters at storytelling. And I'm going to talk about 5 aspects of storytelling that I think are important for us as marketers. The first really is data-driven storytelling. Using data that digital actually allows us, or our digital gives us, enables us to actually create as marketers visual, engaging, targeted stories, which can actually prove to be very potent for brands. What marketers today can do is actually create a story for Atul that resonates with him, a story that resonates with Sakshi differently, and a different story that resonates with Amrita. And that's a huge potential for all of us as marketers, something which just didn't exist a few years ago. And I think that's an important aspect for marketers to now be a lot more cognizant of going forward. The second aspect of storytelling is the whole concept of what I'm going to call mini ads. Right? We've all grown up as marketers, learning to tell a story in 60 seconds. The consumer attention spans are decreasing, people are becoming content wary, and we need to be able to master the art of storytelling on the digital platform. And that storytelling needs to happen in different ways. It needs to happen through visuals, it needs to happen through shorter pieces of content. And therefore, what you need to be able to do now as part of your marketing plan is actually have many mini ads versus an advertising campaign. And that's a big shift in terms of the way that we need to look at marketing. The third thing, which actually I think is very important when we look at storytelling and digital marketing, is that today, the consumer is the voice of the brand like never before. Consumers actually want to co-create brands with you. Consumers want to share thoughts. They want to share opinions. At Nicobar, we've actually been talking to consumers a lot during lockdown. We've actually had the good old focus group discussions now happening on Zoom, and I'm amazed at the amount that the consumers want to share, engage, participate, and co-create with a brand that they love and the brand that they actually want to be part of. And I think that's very important for all of us as marketers. It's important for us to know that this is a huge untapped potential for a lot of us, because here you have a bunch of consumers who actually want to be part of this journey with you as a brand. It can be overwhelming, but it's important for us to start getting the most out of it. And also, we all know that enough studies have also been done which tell you that a large number of consumers actually admit to trusting peers versus just an ad. So UGC, user-generated content, greatly enhances engagement for a brand. And digital brand activations, to me, can actually help build a tribe for a brand versus just building consumers. And I think that's important. The fourth thing that I think is important is purposeful storytelling. I'm sure all of you have read articles today which say that COVID is going to make all of us more mindful. COVID's going to actually is giving people a time to pause, reflect, and actually realize that, you know what, we've messed up. We've messed up quite a bit. And it's important for us as we go forward to be more mindful in our thinking, to be mindful in our actions. And I think it's important for brands to embrace that. And, we've always debated to death as marketers about purposeful marketing. Is it important? How important is it for a brand to actually have a purpose? And I truly believe that more than ever before, it's important for brands today to have a purpose, believe in a purpose, act on a purpose, and talk about that purpose, because consumers are actually going to seek that information out. And digital, again, is going to provide you enough opportunities and enough options to actually weave that into your brand storytelling. And the last piece, I think, in terms of storytelling is about immersive storytelling. Steve spoke about it. But, we expect that there'll be 200 million VR headsets sometime this year with consumers. AR is becoming a reality for brands. And therefore, it's very important for us as marketers to actually look at immersive storytelling. And that's really going to be the core of digital brand activation, where you can engage, educate a consumer at a whole new level. So to me, these are 5 aspects of storytelling which I think are important for us as marketers as we go forward. And I'm quickly going to just talk about reimagining, right? All of us have spent, I'm sure, significant time over the last couple of weeks saying, let's reimagine life, right? We're reimagining life, we're seeing life differently. And as marketers, the big question is, what's my consumer going to do? And I think I've tried to think of 5 different pivots, which I think are important. I don't think it's only happened now. They were, in my opinion, changes which were happening. They've just probably got accelerated. And they are probably changes which are going to happen a lot more rapidly than we had thought they would. The first thing for me is, we've always believed that, physical interaction is the best. Nothing can, be better than me talking to a consumer one-on-one, face-to-face, telling you how amazing my product is. In my opinion, that's going to dramatically change. That has been changing. Technology can do so much, and digital marketing will actually enable a lot of that transition to now happen. Digital marketing will no longer be a good to do, but a must do, or digital brand engagements won't be a good to do, but actually a must do for most brands. The second thing that I think we need to reimagine is we need to move away from brand endorsers, which we've all, as marketers, dealt with. We have brand ambassadors, we have brand endorsers, we have celebrities. To me, I think a big shift will be from brand endorsers to actually brand ambassadors. And I'm actually calling your consumer your brand ambassador. And fundamentally, the fact that the digital platform will allow you to have and create a tribe of consumers who will actually be your best endorsers or your best ambassadors. That's, to me, the second aspect that I think we should reimagine. The third is, and this is maybe specific from an India context, is as marketers, we've always said, you know what, if I'm a niche luxury brand, digital is great. When I'm a mass brand, the masses in India aren't yet as digitally savvy. And seriously, look at us today. Government school education is happening over mobile. Digital has actually replaced a lot of physical interaction. And I think that's important for us as marketers to now finally accept and actually implement a lot more in terms of digital brand engagements going forward. The fourth thing to me is, as marketers, we tend to have an approach of mass marketing, mass advertising, one size fits all sort of an approach for at least 80% of our spends. And that to me will change, where you move from mass advertising, mass media, to actually targeted data-driven digital marketing or digital brand engagements. What digital will allow you to do is actually look at different cohorts differently. And fundamentally, what you should be doing is having the right insight with the right message for the right consumer. And that to me is a bit of a pivot in terms of how we start looking at the way that we actually plan our marketing efforts. And the last final pivot that I've been thinking of is we need to switch the way we think of marketing to our consumers from a one-way delivery of information to consumers. We've always felt that as a brand, I'm going to put out my brand promise, I'm going to put out my advertisement, and the consumer's going to just take it in. We need to move from that to actually a two-way engagement with consumers. Technology enables that, digital marketing allows that, the consumer is ready for that, and the consumer's done a lot of it the last 40 days. And therefore, the pivot or the reimagination for me is to move from one-way delivery of information on brands to actually a two-way engagement, which is really a conversation between a brand and its consumers. So yeah, that's my 5 things that I'm trying to think of in terms of how we can re-engage and reimagine life as marketers. Thank you.
Good stuff, Sakshi. You know, your first 5 aspects of storytelling, I mean, absolutely brilliant. We could have an entire session only on those, because, you know, the way we kind of try to structure these sessions was, you know, the first session that we did, we tried to do it on why digital brand activation, and this one was really about the what, and you've kind of taken us to that tantalizing edge of how without really going into the how deeply, and that's going to come in the next session. So that's absolutely brilliant. Amrita, all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Sakshi. Our next speaker is Avnish Tripathi. Avnish is a curious student of consumer businesses and consumer behavior, with 2 decades of consumer marketing and sales experiences across different categories like bakery and dairy, frozen foods, lifestyle products, premium alcoholic beverages, white goods, across different organizations like Mondelez, Britannia, Godrej, and Diageo. Avnish has traversed through leading challenging marketing portfolios and turning businesses around with large people footprint. He's an avid believer in the power of technology and processes, and he's excited by unorthodox solutions. On the other side, Avnish is a music enthusiast and amateur runner and loves playing superhero to his young daughter. Avnish, over to you.
Thanks, guys, for having me here. I absolutely love the points made by my fellow speakers, particularly from the creative and the brand side of marketing. And I do find myself fairly challenged to be able to represent the business aspect. And we all do know that these are very, very tricky times. So maybe I will try to bring in a certain sense of business perspective here, and then possibly lead you to some instigations which sit on the cusp of brands and businesses. So obviously the pundits have been speaking that COVID-19 has been a black swan event for humanity, but I do believe that for digital, it's been a watershed event. I mean, it's almost the equivalent of what demonetization was for digital payments. And it is quite evident that the operative world in the future will be significantly different in many ways as we move forward. But even before the pandemic struck, fact is that digital as a media, whether for marketing, communication, advertising, or for activation, it was growing significantly faster than the other media, possibly at 2x of regular media, driven by greater adoption and a recognition of its higher level of functionality. I mean, it allows for sharper targeting, personalization, closing the conversion loop all the way to commerce. But I do believe that now it's going to only gain further advantage over all the other forms of media as we move forward. But at the same time, one of the, I would say, sombering thoughts at this level is that as the disruption took place, organizations and businesses, their degree of digital openness have suddenly got exposed. So some quickly pivoted with an agile blend of both mobile and telecommerce. We've seen e-commerce guys quickly reinstating business mix of both internet and telecom, while the others were just pushed into staying frozen. So what are my thoughts? I believe that as we move forward in their bid to stay both sustainable as well as relevant, several businesses will move to absorb digital far more closely in terms of not just their style of marketing, but also their style of operations in general. So a big move towards even trying out first-party e-commerce, especially companies which already have a certain offline footprint in terms of branded stores. So next time, if you see a dairy, a small dairy player which also has offline booths which are fairly unglamorous, don't be surprised if you suddenly see a layer of digital coming around them, adding to their marketing and to their activation footprint, moving forward. I also do feel that several smaller brands, which so far often felt very, very disadvantaged when compared with large brands with large distribution footprint, could possibly suddenly get even with taking a far more digital first approach. But as curious as I am, let me possibly see if I can leave you with some instigations on how really even digital possibly needs to undergo a fair degree of change, because we have moved in from a point in time where digital was a nice to do, just one more medium of communication, one more arm, a nice fluff to add to your layer of activation, to suddenly now in the current space where a lot more is expected out of digital. And as we move into that space, would it be absolutely expected that businesses will be able to make that transition? Brand teams and marketing agencies, would they be able to make that transition? I think there's a key watch out here. As a marketer, if a brand had a template for on-ground activation or an experiential engagement, which relied a lot on the power of individual presence or personal connect, the same cannot obviously be templatized on digital. I think Steve mentioned about how converting an offline experience possibly has different spikes, but just a cut, copy, paste wouldn't just deliver the same message if you take it to digital. It possibly will need to be reimagined. And in that reimagined form, it possibly will need to have different spikes, possibly greater interactivity or greater personalization, etc. And I do believe that as that repurposing is done, it will possibly have to be done for the digital user and not by romancing the digital platform. I think so far a lot has been done by keeping the platform in the center, whereas I think the new times will demand us to put the digital user in the center and harmonize it with his consumer journey in the digital space. So let me leave you with, and let me give you a couple of questions. And I think Team Candid, I'm sure, would already be grappling with it. But then each of us as brand guys also do the same. So many foods and beverages companies which have had a significant out-of-home experience, which rely on the taste and flavor of the products, are suddenly going to see that their out-of-home component from business has just vanished. With consumers staying indoors more often, possibly newer consumption occasions are being created. How can those consumption moments be salvaged? How can they get activated? Or is there an opportunity for driving in-home consumption through some new kind of activations enabled digitally, yet relevant to the consumer in his new frame of mind? We always used to look at congregation points as a great way of getting efficient activations, whether it's schools, colleges, malls, possibly even food joints, horeca points, etc. But most of these have suddenly just vaporized away. So with RWAs gone, schools being shut, malls not allowing access, how could you create a version of activation which can be done online, done remote, enabled digitally, and yet pushes the complete loop right till trial or to conversion? People are not going to offices anymore. What happens to radio? And if radio is not being accessed anymore, can somebody step up and take that space? Is it digital music? Is it one of those platforms? How do we really take that a piece and play it up to our advantage? Offices are not operational. What happens to the digital OOH? Can it be replaced by a stronger version, AR, VR, in-home experience? Is there a possibility? So, I think these are things that we are going to grapple for some time in the short term. And I'm sure that the new normal would definitely also lead to a new order. But I do feel certain principles would stay relevant. There is this whole idea around insights. I think the fact that marketers need to center their brands and their activities around the consumers, centered clearly around insight, cannot be truer than in the times that we live right now. The fact is, people are spending greater time at home on their devices, and they're expected to possibly do that in the near future. So marketers need to possibly find them where they are. What do they do in their me time? How do they interact? How do they transact? Now, it cannot just be around building their digital personas and building a strategy for connecting. I think it's also an opportunity for us to zoom back and see how our core consumer insights can be brought alive on the digital means. For far too often, I think digital has spoiled us with a lot of data, which then tempts us to move into micro-marketing. This is possibly the moment when digital activations can possibly take a larger mandate, which possibly some of the other mediums have been taking so far. Personalization. I mean, we've known that consumers wish to be treated as individuals and feel celebrated for their distinctiveness. Categories like fashion, beauty, medical services already have taken a head start in terms of the way they've used technology to establish personalization, provide personalized solutions, move into personalized shopping experiences. I think is going to be the benchmark for most of the organizations. So net, I believe the core focus, even for stakeholders in the digital ecosystem, is now going to be to drive connect, rather than the flirtation to do the next happening viral thing that could possibly be the talk of the town. I do believe that while content is going to evolve as we move forward, marketers need to be in sync with the ground realities and the emotional state of the audience, at least in the immediate short term. The next 6 to 9 years, possibly 6 to 9 months, possibly will see consumers who are far more anxious, are back to basics, and are battling maybe certain existential challenges. So more authentic, simple, assuring, uplifting tonality, rather than getting pulled into the slapstick humor, which lent itself very well to virality, is going to be a nice thing to follow. I don't know. There was we did see a lot of trend on formats being snackable, shareable. Of course, I think some of them would stay. But I think consumers are spending more time on their devices. Possibly they have more time. They are being repurposed themselves. So is there a greater openness for long format that engages them a little more deeply? I do believe so. I think there is obviously the ever-growing space for better visuals for retention and relatability, etc. But again, as a stakeholder from business, I again say that we are going to encounter businesses putting greater onus on what does this marketing activity do for us, particularly in the immediate term, because we're all going to be battling lots of existential challenges of survival and stability. So layers that enable transaction, layers that allow for frictionless transition of messaging into communication, I think are things that all marketeers and specifically the digital marketeers would end up encountering. I do feel these are the challenges that we all have to possibly scale up to, and it's going to be very, very interesting.
Thanks, thanks, Avnish. Seriously, very interesting and good viewpoints. Joao has been extremely efficient and has been answering questions for a lot of the attendees also. I think, Atul, do you want to take some more questions?
I think what we'll do is we'll just take one question.
Yeah.
I think we'll just take one question real quick from Sachin Rudra, and I'm going to come to Sakshi with this question that, he's asking, do you think as things settle down post-COVID, consumers will go for what he calls non-digital revenge? Consumers sick of digital and being cooped up without too much human contact want more of it now. Do you think there's going to be some non-digital revenge?
First, after Sachin, your guess is as good as mine. But having said that, I actually feel that, yes, it's not easy to be at home for 40 days. And therefore, you do expect consumers to want to go out. But I do feel that there will be a filtering of what people will choose to go out for. And there will be some things that they say, you know what, for this, I'm just going to go out because we need to go out. But there will be a few things that they will choose not to go out for. So I think the consumer will make a choice, and this choice could differ by consumer, but I think there'll be a choice that people will make that I'll step out for this, and for this activity or for this purchase, I will not step out and I will only do digital. So yeah, I don't know if that's useful, but I do think that there will be revenge, but there won't be a blanket revenge. It'll really depend on categories and locations actually as well.
I think Joao disagrees to that because what he's written is also interesting. No, digital will grow even faster. People will continue to be afraid of physical contact. The hygiene of the digital experience will be a key factor in future sales, is what he responded to.
Steve, you want to come in and kind of get your 2 bits in terms of what do you think people will do post normalcy, let's say?
Is the kind of $1 million question, but and I do, yeah, it's anyone's guess, but if I was going to guess, I would say, and speaking to people and listening to people who've come out the other side, who've actually even suffered from COVID and they come out the other side, strangely enough, the number one thing is that they have said that they want to go out, they want to hug people, they want the physicality of contact, almost a release. And I think that's because we have that innate humanity that is very much kind of part of everyone and that big community. But I do think, just as was said before, people are going to be more selective. You're going to actually think about everything you are about to do for a fair time. But do remember, disaster after disaster, it is amazing how short people's memories are. And we will say all these things, and with the best thought and insight, ask me in 2 years, I think everything will be pretty much the same. But we've got a long way and a gradual move back to that. But I do think for brands, if you're going to do something and you're going to ask people to get out there and engage with you, it's got to be pretty special. And that's how if you're going to do something, and I think it's mixing digital and physical again is a nice way to make those moments in the real world that bit more meaningful and then keep the conversation going digitally, if that helps too.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you to all 4 of you for being a part of this panel. We unfortunately have to cut it right now because we are
absolutely. We run out of time. Otherwise, there's loads of questions, and I'm sure you guys have loads of answers. Apart from we just gotta go. So thanks very much for your time, Sakshi, Steve, Avnish, and Joao. And for the audience, I think we'll be back in just about 3 or 4 minutes, not very long, for the next session. See you there.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Bye. Next session starts at 4:20. Hi everyone, back for the third session. I think Manjuri is missing or the video is not on. Manjuri, video on, please.
You can start, Amita. Go
Yeah.
for it.
So everyone, welcome back. We've had 2 sessions. They've all gone way over time. So the third one, we're really looking forward to. What we're going to deal with is basically creating engagement through digital brand activation and the whole last mile or closing of the loop. The first speaker is Manjuri Upadhyay. Manjuri till recently was the CEO of Wellspun Home Textiles and is now in Amazon. Apart from being a keen observer of human behavior, Manjuri loves experimenting in the kitchen and is learning to be an Odyssey dancer. Manjuri, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amrita. The new normal, I'm sure a lot of speakers have spoken about the way we live and the way we look at our lives is going to change dramatically until such time that a permanent cure is definitely found for COVID. And, in this new normal, while we see a lot of increase in digital engagement and yes, because people are on their screens very often and all of those things, to us, the big question is that how do you still keep the business chugging along while this is happening? And there is definitely a new normal when you talk about doing business in this new world. And I would really, start customer or consumer backwards to first note down whichever category I manage or whichever business I am in. How's my customer going to change the way they look at the category? And if I have to just take a look at fashion category, everyone knows that there's going to be increased work from home. Schools are going to be shut for some time. People are going to not venture out that much. So the whole demand only for casuals, stay at home, comfort clothing, loungewear, track pants, all of that is going to go up, and probably people are not going to even think of footwear for some time. I just happened to read a joke saying, my footwear thought I'm dead. And it resonates. It does resonate. So you really have to work a customer backwards to see in the new normal. And the new normal is, in my mind, at least 6 to 8 months. It's going to be just this way. So what is it that the consumers are clearly, changing their lifestyle around? And look at each and every category of yours. And snacking has gone up dramatically. Baking at home so there's a lot of opportunity for food companies to figure out these levers that could help build consumption patterns to these new occasions and new demands. Entertainment at home, so whatever is going on with Prime Video and Hotstar and everything that you see, that's going to stay for some time. So identify those demand signals and demand patterns. The question is, yes, you still can signal a lot to the consumer, but how do you fulfill it at the end of the day in this new normal? And I can tell you that the ground reality is different and is difficult. It's difficult because of the norms that are created, rightfully so. We all need to be safe, and we all need to take care of our employees, the whole staff in the warehouses, the last mile people who deliver, etc. And social distancing will continue for some time. So all the hygiene practices, etc. But what is it? It means that it's significantly reduced capacity across all the last mile pillars. There is reduced capacity everywhere, which is, not like it's a double, triple whammy kind of a situation. I can't operate my warehouse with full capacity. I can't operate my last mile. So how do I, still manage to service to the demand that I definitely see a spike in, and yet maintain the whole cost angle of it? And that's critical because, we've heard of cash crunches, we've heard of a lot of things, and we still need to get through this situation and manage our working capitals really well. And for that, a couple of things other than, tracking to your customer demand and picking up those signals. The one aspect that I would like to discuss here is, this whole hyper local thing. I think that's going to be the new norm in some time to come. How can I partner with my local shops, local retailers, to get the best of that demand fulfillment coming in? Because I run only with 50% or less than 50% capacity in my warehouse. I don't have enough delivery associates coming in, and that's the situation with everyone pretty much. People are scared; they're not turning up to work. Or they have, pretty much migrated out of the main hubs. So overall shortfall of manpower, and how do I address this, and how can I partner with local retailers to get the demand service to consumers still while enabling. So e-commerce is going to play a huge role in still managing this. And I feel that retailers who have had an early start with the tech-enabled omni-channel, they are definitely going to win this game. It's just not just e-commerce, but some of the retailers that we know of, they have a complete tech-enabled omni-channel, and they are, I think, better prepared in this new normal to service the demand. That is an important aspect. The other aspect that I want to talk about is the whole B2B versus the B2C angle. A lot of B2B companies, they have demands for example, somebody contacted us for a huge number of PPE equipments and masks for employees. How do we service that? That's another angle that's coming in, that who all can we partner with, can aggregate the stuff and still supply the B2B requirements. And there's going to be a lot of demand in that area as well. So think of it in terms of both B2C as well as B2B, and work customer backwards. And and those are the things from a last mile standpoint that I would say, think hyper local in wake of reduced capacity, and shoppability via digital, because you're getting consumers to engage with you quite a bit, but if you can get them to shop at the same time, that would be great. So Instagram already has that capability, but on your own side, if you can, for small ticket size items, maybe it does not make sense, but for large ticket size items, it definitely makes sense to have shoppable digital engagement.
Thanks, Manjuri. Are you done or are you frozen?
Yeah,
I think it's frozen.
Okay.
Oh no, she's there. Okay, go for it.
Okay, thanks, Manjuri. I'll get back to you with some questions, but I want to introduce our next speaker, Michael Green. Michael's the founder and managing partner of Action Group, with over 20 years of hands-on international agency experience in consumer and trade marketing. He has deep involvement in Olympics and FIFA World Cup experiential and hospitality programs, long-standing relationships with clients such as Coke, Mondelez, Mars, and Heineken, and is proud to work with Omnicom and Dentsu Network. Michael, you're on.
And one of the funniest guys I know, despite being a Brit. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, no pressure. No pressure.
No pressure at all.
This is quite surreal. I haven't been to India for, I think, about 2 years. And I didn't imagine I would be back in this format, but it's a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. So I think just to give some augmented background to what Amrita said, I come from an experiential marketing and trade marketing background. So I'm always conscious of both the kind of the consumer marketing side, plus also the actual hard retail and distribution side. And I think that's part of what I want to focus on in the next few minutes. I'm from a background where I've done a lot of work in emerging markets where things change very quickly for good and for bad. I'm going to try and talk fairly globally, and I'm going to try and not talk about COVID and the current situation we're in, because I guess that's been covered, and I don't want to duplicate. So the first point I wanted to make is I think regardless of whether we're talking about digital or TV or physical activation, certain fundamentals don't change. When you're a brand, everything is about mind space and shelf space, or mental availability and physical availability. And Manjuri talked about shoppability. That it's pointless thinking about digital engagement unless you've actually got a means by which someone can go on and actually purchase. So I think digital offers a lot of opportunity, in that traditionally when you pumped out lots of TV media, the gap between watching the commercial and buying was pretty big, whereas now we're in a brave new world. So for all the complication, there's actually a huge amount of opportunity to link messaging at a consumer level to actual purchase. So for me, it's that dual battle for mental and physical availability. And that's what should be prime in our minds whenever we're thinking about how do you activate digitally. Fundamentally, I'm a massive skeptic about differentiation. I very much buy into Byron Sharp's model of penetration is everything. That you've got to have mental and physical penetration with your brands. You've got to be available. You've got to stand out. You've got to be easy to buy. And we as marketeers or as salespeople, we can sit down and we can try and cut people up into groups and segment them and target our brands at them. But fundamentally, that's not how people work. We're just one of thousands of choices people make every month. And being everywhere, being on the channel, both in terms of communication, but also in terms of distribution, is absolutely essential. And we can tell ourselves that our consumers are loyal to us, our customers are loyal to us, but I generally think that's naive. If you haven't read Byron Sharp, you should go away and read him, because he simplifies our mission in that he's saying, don't overcomplicate what we're doing, where we may feel that we have this huge loyalty base, but in actual fact, our loyal customers represent a very small part of who buys from us. And we're very easy to substitute. So again, everything is about being big, gaining penetration, both there, but also in terms of distribution. And that means online, offline, omnichannel these days. And post-COVID, and that's the only COVID mention I'll make, post-COVID, I think there will be a rebalancing, but I love this point about hyper-local. I don't think things are going to change in that there'll be a rejection of digital, but I think people will value local, and I think there will always be that balance of local and local physical and local digital. And it's almost pointless talking about the division between the two these days. We do a lot of work with Coca-Cola in Europe, and they have a model for communication which they call PET, which is not their form of plastic. It stands for purpose, experience, and talkability. And it's their core test for any means of communication. So they ask whether you're doing TV or digital or outdoor or an event, what's the purpose behind that communication? Is it delivering experience, and is it driving talkability? And talkability doesn't always mean positive talkability. It just means, are we being talked about? And the example they give is, look at the Kardashians. They're not necessarily positive role models, but they are infamous. They are talked about. And being a brand these days is very much about being famous, not just being liked. So talkability is very important. And I think those three pillars are extremely important when you're thinking about any form of digital engagement as well. Because a lot of digital we see, you can imagine people are rubbing their hands together saying that's going to win a Cannes Lion, but you can also hear the sigh of millions of consumers as they look at it and ignore it. Our business primarily is experiential, and we now talk as an agency about experiential both sides of the screen. So whenever we devise experiential, we think about what is that person's experience either through the screen or in the physical world, and we try and blend those together. And it doesn't matter if you're a brand that fundamentally exists online, you are realized physically. And it doesn't matter if you're a physical brand that thinks you're immune to digital, you must have a digital footprint and outreach. And again, back to something that Manjuri said, I think linking to purchase is easier than ever. And it's the bane of many brands' lives. But every time you have a campaign, I think you've got to ask yourself, how can I link this to an actual purchase? And we've done a lot of work with clients where we've done beautiful both sides of the screen experiential, but the missing link was that we forgot to click the person through to actually making a purchase. Now, it's one thing if you're selling chocolate, but a lot of brands, if you're talking about fashion especially, you've got that opportunity every time you communicate to link to purchase. It may be via Instagram, it may be via a payment system like Paytm or Visa or other local systems. It might be through collaboration. And I think also when we look at designing a lot of digital communication now with clients, we look very strongly into collaboration with other brands. and what leverage can you get for your brand through collaboration. Collaboration with e-tailers, who they're in themselves often are very powerful brands like Amazon. Collaboration with payment systems, because again, combining 1 + 1 can equal 3 in this case, and doing things by yourself is difficult. And you see that through a lot of sponsorship programs. So when you look at sponsors like Coke, when they actually work together with a sponsor like Adidas, often they develop very powerful cooperations. It allows them to get that talkability, drive purpose, drive experience. And then finally, I'd say gaming. And I know Sid is probably better than me on talking about gaming, but gaming is obviously huge. And I think that's something which a lot of our clients are struggling with at the moment. And I wanted to just run through a few cases, which I believe Amrita and Atul will share as links afterwards. But I don't know if anyone saw the event on Fortnite last weekend, which was a live concert of Travis Scott. And they had 12 million live viewers inside Fortnite. And in the follow-up events, they had 27 million views. And every single one of those viewers has an associated ID. And every single one of those viewers afterwards received an email asking them if they would like to buy the Travis Scott Nerf gun. So there was a direct link to purchase, apart from being an incredible experience, which gives you goosebumps because Travis Scott was a virtual giant stamping around the Fortnite landscape. They didn't forget the fact that you want to sell something. So you get the merchandise catalog in your email inbox straight afterwards. And I thought it was a beautiful example of how entertainment could change forever after what we're going through now, because that is as valid as going to a real concert. I mean, it's amazing. If you haven't seen it, please click on the link later and have a look. A second one is from the fashion world, a case study from a company called Carlings, which is a Scandinavian clothing manufacturer. And they launched a digital collection, which was purely digital. And you would basically buy clothing, which would be tailored and fitted to you purely to post on Instagram or Facebook. You never received the physical clothing. And their platform was, it was connected to purpose, which was about the environment, experience, in that you download and you wear their digital clothing, and talkability, because you're sharing it on your social network and you are changing your dress virtually. And all the money that they made from that particular collection was linked to WaterAid. So they actually did something powerful socially with the money made from it. But the talkability around that was phenomenal. And incidentally, they were very late to online retailing. They were way behind their competitors. I'm probably at the end of my 5 minutes. So have a look at a couple of other cases that I'll post later. One of them, which I would mention, which I think gives hope to anybody who's in packaged goods, is a case from Faber-Castell, who make coloring pencils. And they did an amazing augmented reality program and communication in Brazil, where you download an app and you basically point it at a pencil, and the pencil becomes a virtual endangered species. And you can interact and you can design and play with that species. And it was an amazing engagement because it had purpose in terms of ecological awareness, experience, because it became something that jumped up on your phone, and talkability, because pretty much every school in Brazil encouraged children to download this app. They had 600,000 downloads, 5 million engagements off the back of this. And it was beautiful. And that's just a pencil. If a pencil can do it, we all can. That's all for me for the moment.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Brilliant stuff. Yeah. Go ahead, Amrita.
Not very funny, sorry.
Next speaker is Siddarth Kedia. Sid is CEO Nodwin Gaming and has the mandate to spearhead and drive the online gaming business in India. He's also an avid mountaineer, and when he's not scaling Mount Kilimanjaro, he likes to capture the wildlife through his lens. He's recently adopted a dog and named her Leila, and he's her Instagram manager. Sid, over to you.
Thanks, Amrita. Before I start, I'd like to actually thank Michael, because he's pretty much done my job. He's shared the case study. That's the power of esports. I can just go home, we can call it off, but No.
But you're already home.
That's true. Let me start with a video and give you a glimpse into the world of esports.
Atul.
Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Atul, Amrita, and Team Candid for curating this. These are difficult and unprecedented times. There is nothing business as usual about it, and hence the webinar couldn't be titled more appropriately. I don't know how many of you know, but Control F5 literally means hard refresh. It means bypass and delete even the cache and start afresh. This couldn't be more true for businesses today and in times to come. Hence, what I'm going to say is not business as usual. And if any of us thinks that life will go back to how we knew it, we need to think again. Coronavirus has just done a global Control F5. And now I am more convinced than ever that we are probably living in the matrix. All this while, when marketeers looked at spending their budgets to use, the first distinction was ATL versus BTL. In ATL, traditional media came first and then digital. In digital, it ranged from SEO to banners to social to video, and then came gaming. And then within gaming, last came esports. So let's say esports was 0.1% of a brand spend, if at all. My prediction, that is set to change. COVID has shown, and at an accelerated pace at that the youth of this country increasingly want interactive entertainment and not passive. Let me give you some numbers. Just in the last month, gaming in India has grown by almost 50%. Watching of game streams, which is nothing but esports, has gone up by approximately 75%. We run one of the premier properties of Tencent called PUBG Mobile Premier League. We had to postpone that last month because of COVID. However, we ran something called PMPL scrims. So we run tournaments every day for PUBG Mobile, which are live casted on YouTube, and there are awards given, prizes given every day. The daily viewership of PMPL scrims is sitting anywhere between 1.2 to 1.5 million views. That's the new reality. We have done tournaments where we have broken YouTube, where we have reached 2.1 million concurrent views on YouTube. And those are unheard of views. So going forward, when it comes to youth, brands need to think beyond reach, beyond frequency. They have to think engagement. They have to think loyalty. Because this is not even millennials, this is centennials. Authenticity is important. Connect is important. A brand's connect with its audience will have to be about interactivity and community creation, but more importantly, understanding that community. So while social and digital spends will continue to grow, esports will emerge as the medium of choice to interact with the youth of this country. Again, I predict the marketing spends on esports could rise up to 15% in the next 12 to 18 months. And we are already seeing evidence of that. Brands that did not give us a meeting in the last 3 years are now sitting at our door saying they want to give us their money. And I'll give you an example why. Our premier product called India Premiership, which is the national championship, starts next week. Considering EPL is not happening, considering Olympics are gone to next year, if IPL were not to happen this year, we will be the only game in town. We will be the only sporting activity which would be live casted on Hotstar for the next 9 months live. That's esports. Brands will have to, or rather must include esports as one of the most engaging mediums of interactive entertainment. Market share going forward will be influenced by the size, voice, and volume of a brand's community. And nothing better than esports to engage with the gaming community. So let me give you a scenario. I was at an esports conference a few months back when we were still traveling, and I actually met a few players from Brazil. The problem that Brazil has right now is that the 10 to 12-year-olds don't want to see Messi play football or Ronaldo play football. They want to see the FIFA players play the game FIFA. That shook me. Football is in the blood of Brazilians. If the youth of Brazil, and this is, mind you, not America, not Western Europe, Brazil, which is an emerging country like we are, is now saying, I don't want to see mainstream sports, I am predicting the same thing is going to happen in India. So, and I don't want to, had I been on this panel a few months back, I would have told you these are the 4 ways brands could engage with their community on esports. However, a panelist said in the last session, marketing is not going to be one fit for all approach anymore. And that's more true for us than anyone else. So everything that we do can be custom made. For every brand, we can custom made a solution. You tell us, what are you looking for? You're looking for an in-stream integration. You're looking for a custom content generation. You're looking for an in-game placement. You're looking for in-stream placement. You tell us what is it that we are looking for, and esports can deliver that to you. And hence, I don't want to go into the narrative of what are the solutions possible, because for everyone, there would be a custom made solution. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Atul, do you want to start with the questions?
Yes, I will. You know, Michael, you mentioned about one of the most important things is that you've got to be easy to buy. And you and I have worked together, though some years ago, but fared very, very closely. And I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of you've got to be easy to buy, both in terms of mind space and shelf space. My question for you, if you could help us elaborate a little further, is that, and I'm not going to dwell on the COVID space and the lockdown and things like that. Let's just say 1 year from now, when consumers are relatively back to normal, do you see a difference in a fundamental shift in behavior, thereby making consumers harder to get to in terms of, because they spend so much time in the digital space watching e-games instead of going to Premier League games and going to watch football in large Brazilian stadiums? How do you see that kind of transpiring, in your opinion?
I think I caught the back end of the last panel, and Steve said that there was it's amazing how short people's memories are when it comes to crises and disasters, and you know that just from looking at news cycles. I think this is different in that this is going to open people's minds up and eyes up to how things can be done differently. And a lot of people, I think especially if you consider at-risk groups who have to stay locked down beyond when we'll be locked down. I'm talking about seniors who maybe previously didn't buy online, have now realized that it's not as scary and not as difficult, and actually, hey, quite easy, especially when they might always have in the back of their minds, I'm at risk. And they could be at risk for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, vaccine or no vaccine. So I think this has acted as a massive sampling exercise for e-commerce. And I think in that way, some people will never go back. John Lewis, which is a big retailer in the UK, which you probably know about. John Lewis has basically said that there's a lot of their stores they won't reopen. and they think it's the end of the high street in some situations. And they came out yesterday, the new CEO, who, poor lady, took over, I think, in February. So her first job is furloughing lots of staff. She has basically said they're probably going to get into personal financial consumer credits, and that they understand that the world is going to change inexorably. This has accelerated what's inevitable anyway, but I think on one side it's going to migrate people to e-commerce maybe earlier than they would have gone otherwise. Right. I don't think it means physical shopping is not going to finish. I think the question is, where will the balance be? But then I think things that are more radical are like the example I gave of Travis Scott. People are recognizing that entertainment can be AR. Entertainment doesn't have to be watching a real person on stage. And I think the idea for most people of esports and gaming and watching something which is not real seemed like anathema. It's like, that's crazy. But I think this again is helping people understand that you can get a buzz from that. I mean, let's face it, there was a time when we only listened to live music, and people would have said, oh, yeah, there's no way I'm going to listen to that without looking at the actual musician. I think we're in that kind of sea change. So yeah, I think it will kind of boomerang a little bit, but it will stay, the boomerang will be slightly ahead of our hands.
Manjuri, any thoughts on that? Anything you'd like to add to that process that's going to kind of transpire post?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with Michael. It's dramatically going to change how people think about physical versus digital, and also socializing versus being at home. I think there's already a lot of virtual socializing happening from home, and people are just happy doing those virtual parties, etc. That is going to stay for some time. To Michael's point, elderly, definitely. I think e-commerce is definitely going to pick up, because from a lot of consumers that we've spoken to, we know that they want to minimize exchange of hands, and that's the theme. How can I minimize transactions in terms of physical exchange of hands, and whether therefore the whole delivery system that that at least these people are guaranteeing that they have sanitized their warehouses, and these people are all wearing gloves, etc. So I trust this source, so that's fine. I'm not just going to go by myself into a random store and buy it. High street is dead, as they said. There was a 700% increase in online shopping on the Taobao website in China post easing of lockdown in China. So e-commerce, there is no doubt, that's a place where there's a lot of trust and credibility. That's definitely going to go up. But a lot of entertainment at home, and how to keep people happy at home is going to be the new theme for brands, and we have to all figure it out together. Whether it's entertainment, it's gaming, all of that is going to significantly go up.
Well, the Shanghai Fashion Week was live streamed to some 700 million buyers, I believe, on Alibaba's Mall and Taobao platform. So, and people went berserk buying it, and everything they showed in the Fashion Week was available to buy. So, but do you think, these large scale innovations will work in India in terms of, what should I say, buying in such a large scale on expensive fashion items, Fashion Week going online? Because a panelist before also said that, maybe after the lockdown finishes, things might go back to just only certain items being bought online and people preferring to buy the rest offline, So, Manjuri?
Yeah. So while, there is a benefit of seeing, touching things, especially home textiles, fashion, you want to try it on before you buy it. But the scare around catching it from a surface that I'm not aware of. And it's just that whole scare in people's head that, they don't want to touch anything right now. Because there's enough news around, things being on surfaces, and that needs to be clean and stuff like that. It's a far less risk to take in terms of ordering online. And hey, when the return is available and exchange is available, why not? Why not? Absolutely. I mean, we heard of this news of Louis Vuitton, online sales jumping up. People in China came out doing revenge shopping, but when the secondary infection started to go up, they're all back again to online shopping. So designer brands will sell through online for sure. I don't see luxury going down because there are so many who are just financially unimpacted. And they're going to continue to want it, although where will they wear it is a question that we all have to ask. And where will they carry those bags if it's going to be limited interaction outside of home? But yeah.
Sid, there's a question in for you. How to build scale for virtual experiences? Well, you just said you broke the YouTube. So I think maybe the person wants to know that how did you build the viewership for those virtual experiences?
Well, so it's the community, right? So it's the community of gamers, which is a very, very thick community. And what is happening is, so let's talk numbers. PUBG Mobile. PUBG Mobile has about 500 million downloads. And this is, I'm sure this number has significantly gone up. My information is still a little dated, but has about 500 million downloads, out of which about 140 plus million are sitting in India. When there is such a massive community which is playing the game, there is a very high interest in viewership of that game. So that's one. Second is, how do you build this community? You build this community by giving them an authentic experience. You give them a neutral caster who is going to cast the game, which is equivalent to commentator in any sport. You give them an analyst before the game and post the game, which is going to analyze the game. So everything that happens in traditional sports, the moment you bring it to esport, and you give it the same status for yourself, the community starts building. And then there are influencers. So I don't know how many of you are aware, but 3 years back, if you looked at gaming influencers on YouTube, only 1 or 2 people had followers more than 1 million. Fast forward to three years later today, there are 40 to 50 gaming influencers that have following of more than 1 million. And mind you, these gaming influencers, more than they are making money through brand endorsements and streamings, they are making money through donations. So you and I are watching their stream. We love watching their stream, and we're just donating them money on the stream. That's the connect. And that's
sounds a bit like TikTok, yeah?
Well, but
no, that was just a joke. That was just a joke, please. Okay, I'm gonna take you up on something you said in the beginning, Sid. And you have thrown the gauntlet to one of the holiest cows of India. Though you did not use the word cricket, you talked about football in Brazil, but you effectively said that cricket in India is under threat. Okay, and that's one of the holiest. The other one's Bollywood, so we won't talk about that because that's also in the space of fantasy, similar to online gaming. But talking about cricket, do you really see the impact of online gaming and online behavior of consumers? Because cricket is a huge influence, and I'm not getting into online gaming versus cricket. That's a discussion for a different platform. I'm talking about how cricket impacts commerce and marketing because of, brand ambassadors that come out of cricket, heroes, and they're followed, advertising on cricket platforms, in stadium, all of that. And online gaming kind of attacking that bastion. You alluded to it, so I'd like to kind of
So Atul, let me not say a lot because very soon we are going to come up with an announcement for that. However, what I can tell you is that today, in terms of esports, the biggest game in India is PUBG. Take it from me, in writing, 2 years from today, cricket is going to rival those numbers, and we are going to make it happen.
Cricket online, you mean?
Esports version of cricket, yes.
Interesting. All right. You heard it here first. Okay, Amrita, all yours.
Yeah, I'm just going through all the questions. For others watching, just send in your questions. I'm just quickly going to read some more. Manjuri, I think this could be answered by you. How important will it be?
Sorry, Amrita, before you do, I'm really sorry, Amrita. I just saw a question from a guy called Sanjay Roy, which is related to what Sid was just saying. Sid, it's a small question. What's the core demographic that is hooked on to esports?
18 to 25.
Okay, go ahead, Amrita. Sorry.
Yeah. how important will it be for your marketing partner to capture and manage your data and deliver precision marketing at lower cost? I think there are 2 or 3 people who asked the similar thing on reaching true and accurate audiences and the cost factor.
Extremely important, and as the channels also, the channel mix is going to change dramatically, and people are going to absolutely spend more on digital activation, digital engagement, integration of campaigns within your shopping website, etc. So more and more around the ROI, because it is possible to measure it. It's going to be even more stringent versus the previous normal, because the spends were only 15-20% max of the total cross-channel marketing. It's going to go up significantly now, and people are going to ask for a bang for their buck for sure, and costs will be under pressure for some time. So whatever little companies have to spend on digital marketing, they would want to know the exact numbers and authenticity around data and the ROI measurement.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for
I'm
today.
gonna do one last question, Amita, sorry, and then we kind of close. I mean, it just struck me that we were talking a lot, and through the 3 sessions, we've been talking a lot about what's going to change, how consumer behavior is going to change. People are going to go more digital. We talked about it in various contexts of purchase behaviors, gaming, etc., etc. What's going to remain the same? So very often, when we're talking, especially the world we're living in right now, we're seeing so much changing. But what's fundamentally going to, in your opinion, in each of your opinion, going to fundamentally remain the same in the context of consumer behavior and user behavior? Siddarth, we can start with you and then go on to Michael and Michael.
Yeah, so Atul, in my mind, from a consumer standpoint, whether we live in a pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID world, I think what will remain the same is a need to connect with the brand, a need to connect with the messaging, a need to connect with the communication. The need to connect will remain the same, and authenticity is going to drive that need. That does not change at all, ever.
Michael?
Yeah, Sid stole my word there.
Thought so. Why don't you crack a joke? Why don't you crack a joke for us instead?
You can say what Lars Ulrich said that day, yesterday, Michael, the Salesforce live cast. You can talk about that.
I think we're all aware that probably consumers were always very bullshit sensitive. It's just that we fooled ourselves that they weren't. And I think both politically, commercially, I think it's clear now that people aren't maybe as stupid as we thought they were, and that they're also, people are fickle. Their heads are easily turned, and authenticity is important, but authenticity doesn't mean undying loyalty. So I think a brand has got to stay loud, stay true. They'll be caught out if they lie, just as politicians are often caught out as they lie increasingly, which is great. Maybe to no end, but at least they have their moment of embarrassment as they get caught. So I think authenticity without complacency is never going to change. And it doesn't matter whether it's the Black Death period in the 14th century or post-COVID in the 21st century. That will never change.
Manjuri?
Yeah, I would go back to Maslow's hierarchy. And I think, the love for food, the love for entertainment, and the love for connection is going to stay no matter what. The mediums can change to deliver these things to consumers, but our basic needs, that's why we are humans. Food, entertainment, and connection with people.
That's a lovely positive note to end on. Amrita, go for it, please.
Thanks to the 3 of you. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for all the people who watched us.
It's been a great afternoon. We learned a lot from all our panelists. over the 3 sessions. Thank you very much, attendees, for being here. And we'll see you guys soon. Thanks a lot, Michael. Thanks a lot, Sid. Thank you very much, Manjuri.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Bye.